Our first scripture today will be in the New Testament. Yes. It is the call of Jeremiah.
That'll be from the Old Testament.
Yeah. It's the call of Jeremiah. It is Jeremiah 1:4-10. And it goes, "The word of the Lord came to me, saying, Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as the prophet to the nations. Alas, sovereign God, I said, I do not know how to speak. I am too young. But the Lord said to me, Do not say, I am too young. You must go to everyone I send you to, and say whatever I command you. Do not be afraid of them, for I am with you, and I will rescue you, declares the Lord. Then the Lord reached out his hand and touched my mouth and said to me, I have put my words in your mouth. See, today I appoint you over nations and kingdoms to uproot and tear down, to destroy and overthrow, to build and to plant." The next scripture is Luke 13:10-17. Jesus heals a crippled woman on the Sabbath. On a Sabbath, Jesus was teaching in one of the synagogues, and a woman who had been there, was crippled by a spirit for 18 years. She was bent over and could not straighten up at all. When Jesus saw her, he called her forward and said to her, "Woman, you are set free from your infirmity." Then he put his hands upon her, and immediately she straightened up and praised God. Indignant because Jesus had healed on the Sabbath, the synagogue leader said to the people, "There are 6 days for work, so come and be healed on those 6 days, not on the Sabbath." The Lord answered him, "You hypocrites! Doesn't each of you on the Sabbath untie your ox or donkey from the stall and lead it out to give it water? Then should not this woman, a daughter of Abraham, whom Satan has kept bound for 18 long years, be set free on the Sabbath from what bound her?" When he said this, all his appointments were humiliated, but the people were delighted with the wonderful things he was doing.
Well, I believe that God's work is to set us free. I mean, that seems to be a theme throughout the Bible. People get into bondage, people get into distress, become overcome by sin, however you might want to say it. But then God is constantly working to set human beings free again. In fact, to the extent that God sent his son, Jesus, to help that freedom happen. You know, I'm sure some of you have gone through this, but I was a bit new to this retirement thing last year, so I was just trying to understand what it meant to get a little bit older. You know, thank you for talking about me being Tigger at annual conference. You know, I used to lose almost 10 to 20 pounds. What Alice was talking about, I used to be like the assistant to the secretary before I became the secretary, and I had to run around and find everybody to come up to the microphone. So I was just running all over the place all the time. She was right. It was kind of fun. But then they made me the secretary, and I had to sit by the bishop and wear a tie, so I couldn't run around anymore. That's where all this weight came from. It was during that time. But anyway, you know, I was feeling a little depressed, but one of my friends posted on Facebook something that was posted on Wave 105 Radio by Diana Taylor and Vinny Tratata. And what it described was how I have now become a scene-ager. Now, Olivia, you got to listen to this because this is something for you guys. I mean, this is your future. I become a scene-ager. And you see, as a scene-ager, I have everything I ever wanted. Except like 50 or 60 years later. I mean, think about it. I don't have to go to school or work. I get an allowance every month. It's guaranteed. I own my own pad. I don't have a curfew. I have a driver's license and I own my own car. And guess what? I have an ID. I'm not sure this is actually a good one. It gets you into bars or can let you buy the wine with the smiley faces on it. In fact, you know, it's kind of funny. They don't even much card me anymore. And the people I hang around with, you know, they're not scared of anything. Because they've been blessed to live this long. So why be scared? And you know, I don't have acne. Well, actually, I had to go see the dermatologist this week. So if you notice little spots on my face, it comes from the freezing, right? But we all go through that because of all the times we spent in the sun when we were kids, you know, getting sunburned. But here's the other thing, and this really helped me. I don't feel so bad now. Because, sometimes we feel less intelligent as we get older. But here's the facts. Scientists have discovered this. It's not that our mental capacity declines with age. It's just because our brains get full. In fact, they're so full, it's just hard to recall facts. We have to go through a whole lot more to get those facts out. In fact, now they have even discovered that it's because of the full brain that we have hearing loss. Our brains are so full, it pushes on our inner ear, so we can't hear as well. And here's the last thing. This is one of the best things about becoming a teenager. You see, oftentimes we go into another room, we forget why we're there. But this is God's way of making sure that older persons get more exercise. So, what the disc jockey said was this: so I have more friends that I should send this to, but right now I can't remember their names. So please forward this to your friends, because they might be my friends too. So there we go. And the reality is, becoming a teenager happened over time. So I was able to adapt to it. And actually, it's not that bad. It's kind of great. But isn't it true there are sometimes events in our life that just happen all of a sudden that can be rather debilitating? There's a story about a turtle. He was walking down the road, and all of a sudden over the horizon came 2 snails. When they caught up with them, they attacked him. They mugged him. And they left him on the road just all beat up. When the police came, he said, well, what happened? He says, well, I don't know. These 2 snails just came up and he's so quick. And then they mugged me. And it all happened so fast, I didn't know what hit me. Snails, turtle, happen so fast. I got that one. Well, but isn't it like that sometimes? You ever had one of those, I just don't know what hit me kind of moments? Where did that come from? I mean, isn't it true, like an illness or an event or a circumstance or something that just happened, just all of a sudden, out of the blue, something that can be very debilitating, just shut us down. And think about this woman in the scripture for today. Not only had she had something debilitating happen in her life, it's been going on for 18 years. And so when Jesus sees her come in the synagogue, all bent over as she's described to be, Jesus has mercy on her and calls to her and heals her. Well, that in itself is a wonderful thing, but hey, wait a minute. It's the Sabbath. And the leader of the synagogue all of a sudden jumps up and says, wait a minute. Hey, there's 600 days when you can do that kind of work. Have her come back and heal her on those other days. But this is the Sabbath. You can't do this on the Sabbath. And he's in his right to say that. If you remember, keeping the Sabbath is a part of the 10 Commandments. I mean, it's one of those core laws. And in fact, if you remember, anytime those core laws got broken, that's when the children of Israel ended up in exile. When they didn't keep the commandments, they didn't keep their end of the covenant. So this leader's a bit scared because they just got back from exile. They're just trying to reestablish their relationship with God. And so the leader is all over Jesus, like, you cannot break the Sabbath. You cannot do this. In fact, remember, that's kind of what this Jeremiah verse is all about, right? It's reminding us that God had called out among the people these prophets and given them the power to remind the people that it's not a good idea to not be in the right relationship with God. But God always had an underlying message. That even in Jeremiah, you kind of have to keep reading that whole book. It starts off pretty rough. The children of Israel also get taken off into exile, but there's always that promise. But someday out there in the future, someday we're going to get this reestablished. Because my ultimate goal as God is to set you free. And so here we have the one who God has now sent to set the people free. In fact, we heard that was going to be Jesus' mission at the very beginning of the Gospel of Luke. Jesus stood up in another synagogue and said, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because He has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim release to the captive and recovery of sight to the blind, to let the oppressed go free, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. Jesus' mission is to release those in captivity, those that are in bondage, those that are bound up by something. And we can relate to that, can't we? You know, oftentimes, like I said, there are those debilitating circumstances in our life. It can be a lot like maybe what the calf feels. You know? I'm not necessarily a rodeo cowboy, but being the district superintendent out there in the Eastern Plains, having served down in Pagosa Springs and Cortez, I had a number of cowboys who were in my churches. And this was this was one of their professional tools. Every fall, they would go out, start having to round up the cattle. Well, so, I'm not trying to offend anybody from PETA here, but sometimes in rodeos, right? One of the events is the calf roping event. Okay? So here's how it goes. Okay, Ellie, take off down the road here. It's all right. It's all right. Yeah, right. Smart kid. But anyway, so yeah, you're right. So out of the chute comes Elliot, and here comes the cowboy, waving his lasso there, and then whipping it around, catches that little calf over the head, the calf goes, what? Right? Then the cowboy jumps off and then, wrestles that calf over. I remember I tried to do this once in my grandfather's ranch. He actually was a cattleman down in East Texas. And I tried to wrestle a little calf like that, and here came the mother and the father, chasing me as fast as I could go. I grabbed my sister, I ran as fast as I could, and threw her over the fence, and I jumped over the fence right when they hit it. So, I respect the cowboys that do this. He's like, ooh, okay, you don't want to mess with little calf, so I wouldn't mess with you. So I know, Steve would be after me in a second. So anyway, all right, but that little calf is tied up, right? And there it is, debilitated, just laying on the ground. Kind of looking up going, okay, how did I get into this? What is this all about? And there are those times, though, in our lives when that sort of lasso kind of event gets tied around our body or neck or whatever it is, and it just kind of keeps sort of tightening up, doesn't it? Just tightening up. So I think Jesus understood that. Jesus looked at this woman and kind of thought about these people. He could see that these were people that had been in bondage, they had been debilitated. They were sort of wrapped up. The only way they could find any kind of safety was beginning to practice the law to such an extreme extent that, in a sense, their faith wasn't as life-giving as it used to be. It was more restrictive, it was more controlling. And maybe there's been times in your life that you've experienced those kinds of things. It can come either because of an event, a circumstance that happens. Or maybe it's the way people have labeled you. You ever thought about that? Labeling can be rather debilitating. They used to give me nicknames, right? I remember when I was a young kid, somebody called me Flip, like for flipper versus skip. When I first heard that, I was like, oh my God. We were running away crying, went to my mother. So they called me Flip. She's like, what? But so I was trying to figure out what does that mean to be called Flip? Or sometimes they might kid about my weight, or they might kid about something else. And I'm sure that's happened to you, that maybe at work or in school or someplace. People just sort of say mean things, give you a nickname. It's not very friendly. Maybe you're a label. Maybe you're not wealthy enough, or you're not smart enough, or don't have the right credential, or whatever the case may be. We get a lot of labels, and sometimes those labels can be debilitating. But Jesus then looks at this woman and says, you are healed. He heals her on the Sabbath. So what's going on? Well, when he's challenged, remember, he looks at the people and says, you hypocrites. You hypocrites. Which one of you does not go and untie either your ox or your donkey, on the Sabbath, and then lead them to water? Now the word in there is untie, right? Because we're talking about what's the work of God to set people free, to untie them, to release them from the things that bind them up, the things that kind of keep tightening, those lassos that are sort of around us all, to untie them. And what does he do for the woman? Well, for all intents and purposes, when he heals her, he unties her. He sets her free from the burden of this other spirit. That's the way they describe it here in this particular verse. Even talking about this term Satan. That Satan has afflicted her for 18 years. But when we think about the role of Satan, it's often to be the one that binds you up, that ties you to something of the world, so that it distracts you from this relationship that you have with God. In a way, it becomes like this wall that separates you from that relationship. So she's set free. Well, the interesting thing is, when Jesus says that, he's invoking a rather strict law. The law is tazeh, bali, hayim, which means you shall not do any harm to any animal. You shall not do harm. Now, of course, you eat and all those things, but you just don't randomly harm something. So, if you're not to do harm, then while you set animals free, then I set humans free. That is basically what Jesus is answering back to them on the Sabbath. I set humans free. And is that not holy work? Is that not the work of God? I got to see a movie this week with Melinda. It's called The Art of Racing in the Rain. It's got to be a great movie because the narrative is from the perspective of a dog, like Bear over here, right? And this dog is watching this family go through life. And some of you have read the book, you've told me. And I probably shouldn't give you all that, but let's just say the story is about a man who's a race driver. He's trying to reach the highest level, maybe to be able to drive at the Grand Prix level. But there's all these circumstances in his life that keep working against him. And this dog is kind of doing the narrative about, what he's learning and what he's discovering. And the man has a wife, the wife dies, the man has a child with his wife, but then the grandparents of the child think that his life is too random, and they're very well off, so they think she should take the granddaughter, and there's just all the stuff that goes on. But throughout the movie, there are these quotes that I'm sure that are a part of the book from Garth Stein, who wrote this book, The Art of Racing in the Rain. And they're really rather deep, thoughtful statements that are made. One of them is this. One of the ways that you can race in the rain, and I guess the gift that this particular man had was being able to do that. And he said this, he says, the car goes where the eyes go. In racing, they say that your car goes where your eyes go. The driver who cannot tear his eyes away from the wall as he spins out of control will meet that wall. The driver who looks down the track as he feels his tires break free will regain control of his vehicle. So that image I just shared there was with the wall was more about that kind of wall. Sometimes there are those things that distract us, in a sense, from the main prize, from where our eyes should be set, what we should be seeing, gazing on. And so it's all these diversions and distractions that get hold of us. And sometimes they cause such fear in us or anxiety that they become highly debilitating. And we become so focused on them that we just keep running into them. Right? Oh, this could happen to me. So guess what? It does. Or that could happen. Or they could do this to me. Or that. Right? So we spend most of our time worrying about what could happen, which keeps us in this highly state of anxiety, which just means we're skipping all over the place. But one who is going to be able to drive and race in the rain has to be one who has a gaze that's beyond that immediate moment. It's in that ability that one can continue to go forward. Another quote is, I know this much about racing in the rain. I know it is about balance. It is about anticipation and patience. It is also about the mind. It is about owning one's own body. It's about believing that you are not you. You are everything, and everything is you. I met two friends at this bluegrass camp I went to down in Levelland, Texas. One played the mandolin. Wow, her life had been tough. She had been recently divorced. She was a Baptist, so that was really bad for her. And I'm not making fun of that. It really was devastating. But she said, I never thought this would ever happen to me. And then that person that she divorced, he just died last week. And so she had to bring all of her kids together and go and marry her former husband. And then she finds out that her brother has cancer. In her life, any of these things could be significantly debilitating. And yet I have a real sense that she's going to make it through. Because she continues to articulate her faith in God. Her eyes seem focused, her heart just seems to be focused. She's a teacher of 400 kids, and she just had her first 400 kids show up. And she talked about, I got through the week, but I know God is going to get me through the next one. Then I met another friend who had a really rough childhood. The father was really, really mean to her, so she has a lot of struggles with self-esteem. And she just told me that. She talked all about the labels that her father used to put on her. And I know that she's trying to practice her faith also. But you can really tell she keeps looking at the wall she's going to run into. She just had to go down and spend some time with her father. And she just came back just, all messed up. To the point where she didn't know if she could even continue living. Well, she chose to, but at the same time, you can just feel the pain, the anguish in her. It's like every time she continues to live another part of her life, the noose just gets tighter and tighter and tighter. The wall is there, and she keeps seeing it in such a way that that's all she can do is run into it. So now it's not one against the other, like one is not better than the other. It's just the way things are sometimes in our lives. But we continue to work on it, trying to set our hearts and our eyes upon the thing and the things that bring us the freedom we all seek. That's what Jesus was all about. Jesus came to release us from the bondage of sin, right? To set us free, to help us find a new life, new birth, a new way in Him. That's what it's about. The true hero is flawed. But the true test of a champion is not whether he or she can triumph, but whether he or she can overcome the obstacles, oftentimes of their own making, in order to triumph. Our work is to separate ourselves from the burden, the angst, the anguish that we all encounter every day. To say, I am alive, I am wonderful, I am. That is something to aspire to. For we all need to shine with all of our light, all the time. So let's sing with your life. The work that we do as we come together in the name of Christ, as we join together as a church, as we study the Bible, as we join together in prayer, however we do it, that's what we're really looking for. We're trying to see how God is working in our life, doing God's work, loosening the lasso, a calf laying on a rodeo floor isn't worth much to anybody. It doesn't feel good for the calf, and it really isn't all that good for us watching him just sit there. So what does that cowboy do? The cowboy comes and lets him go. Calf normally gets up. Where does the calf head to? Well, there's a pen over there. I think there's some food. Let's go. Right? The calf, there's that instinct, knows where to go. And the calf continues to live on. But that's what it was all about when Jesus set this woman free. She was bound over 18 years, but when He healed her, she straightened up. What was the first thing she did? She began to praise God. So setting people free, even on the Sabbath. Now that's God's work. Amen.